Hi guys, this is MakerOfBeauty, and I'm finally getting around to doing tutorial for my roses. I have a lot of shape for my different roses, but what I'm struggling with, what I'm trying to get to, is to have my sizes right to end in full numbers. Like I don't want it to be 3.247, like I want it to be precise, 3.75, you know, by for height, or you know, whatever it is. I just don't want it to be like a long number, but I'm finally getting there. And so I'm doing a tutorial for my first rose. I don't give any fancy names to my templates other than my seamed flowers, like Ariel or Crown Princess or Dragon. Otherwise, I just do template 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for my template 1, my rose has 8 small petals for a bud, but because it's small and I am going to have a center that already comes in as a one cut, it's convenient with regard to having the not to have you know, so many petals to work with. But the problem with it is that you know, you can't, it ends up wasting quite a bit of a paper. So you know, like this is not quite, let's see how long this is supposed to be, around 7 inches, which it is, right? So if it's a 7 inches up and down this way, you don't really have much of a real estate space to squeeze anything else in, unless you're doing 12 by 12. So those just are some of the things that I keep in mind when I'm working with figuring it out how to do the sizing. But I think that's kind of like, you know, me ends up having a point of making sure that my sizes are such that would give you optimal utilization of your real estate space on the paper. Any case, I'm going to show you how you can do it as a one cut, or you know, using the individual petals, whatever floats your boat. I will offer both in my packages. You're gonna have 12 medium-sized petal and 6 large petal. So without further ado, if you are using the one cut, right, then you want to bend it not at this point, although you could, but I don't recommend. But you want to bend it to where the curve of the petal turns into a straight line. So you just press it down, and you don't need to curl these petals at all right now, because you're just going to be squeezing them in and creating a bud. And if you have somebody who's done the flowers before, that should be pretty familiar with for you. Okay, so here you have a chance, right? You can leave it a bit of a, you know, spacing in here. You can make it like a pointed dome. It really, there's no right or wrong way to do it. So however you want to do it, and then you just glue it on both ends. You do have to hold it down to make sure that paper has a good chance to for the glue to sit in and hold your paper together, because you don't want your rose to come apart. And another thing to remember is that if you're going to be working with heavier paper, like 80 pounds and higher, you know, you definitely want to have good glue sticks. Gorilla is actually quite good. Here, you know, you can glue it this way, just like this if you like. You can intersect it. Really doesn't make a difference just yet. So I'm gonna stick with this way. I'm just gonna hold it in place. I'm gonna put a glue in both places right away. My glue is not going down very well. Okay, I think I'm going to glue this side first and then move on to the next one. So I find that if I bend my paper at those lines first, it actually helps me to have a solid base. Let me just fix it here a little bit. And that ends up helping to have a good shape for overall the rose. I find it that sometimes it can be very difficult to try to open it if you will. So I'm just going to hold it in place. Now, if you were to do the one cut, right, then you would essentially just put that in the middle and continue to build it. But I wanted to show you how you would work if you end up choosing to go with a single petal instead. And that one cut was literally, you know, built just by welding these petals together. So you just make it 2 crosses. Where's my, as you can see, I was very generous with the glue, which is why it's leaking out from the sides. And it's about maybe like an inch on the top of each other. I was also thinking about that for my next sizes, the medium-sized rose and a large, I'm probably not going to do such a detailed video. As you guys can see it, right? It was exactly how I've had it before. Okay, so I'm just going to glue this on the top of the other. I don't think the single cut is going to be a possibility with large rose. I still have to look. I don't think it's going to be, unless it's going to end up being 11 by 11, but I highly doubt it, because just for the small one already, this is 7 inches. So even if you have 12 by 12, I don't think the proportions are going to work. But I won't really know until I start playing with the design in a tool that I use, and that tool is called Grab It. Okay, so I'm just adhering this one on the top of it. I'm going to lift it so I can hold it from the bottom to attach it. And this now is just going to start going around it. And here you have different options, right? You can go and glue it this way and just sort of like having it around. You can glue it this way. You know, and really there is no right or wrong way, because, you know, like the flowers don't grow geometrically correct. They grow in many different directions. And so as long as your proportions are good overall, right, it's not going to matter that much which direction you're gluing your buds. And honestly, in my working with the roses, right, it's not, I mean, like, even if I was to glue it this way and that ends up here, that would still look lovely. So in my experience working with roses, the challenge actually lies with a medium size, more so than either the bud or the large, the last petals to go in. I feel that if you get the medium just so precisely, then you're in a good shape. Now, the truth about the flowers with roses, right, the more layers you have, the fuller and richer it's gonna look. So, you know, one option would be to give it, see, I ended up with 4 of them, right? So one option would be to continue to introduce a bit more to your bud and do 12 petals. I'm not going to do it because I'm trying to conserve time and move forward with this tutorial. So I'm just going to jump right over to my medium petals. Okay, so for the medium petal, what I do is I sort of work my middle first, and then I flip it over and I give it a very nice curl. Lifting it up, and I'm going to do all of them before I'm going to start gluing it together, so you can kind of see it. and I'm doing like I think 3 of them at a time. So if I need to give it a curl more later, I'm gonna do that. And so that's my last batch. So the reason I'm working the middle is that I find that if I do that, it helps me with forming my petals once I'm gonna start gluing it. I'm just doing it side by side to give it a bit more of a different curl look. Okay, so there I have it. Now, what I find helpful to myself is that if I either fold or score where my curved line turns into a straight line. So I'm gonna just score it. And it's basically from one end to the other. Okay. So when you get ready to glue your, start to glue your medium petal, right? Don't glue the base right to where you put a score, right? Because remember, your bud is only gonna get bigger and you need the real estate space. So just do it like somewhere half to the half. And I'm someone who's not good at gluing it, flipping it this way. Like I've tried and it didn't quite work for me because I'd get out of the portion. But you know, if you think that you know, that works for you, definitely give this a shot. I also don't recommend doing it this way for fusing the medium petals together. The reason to that is because if you're gonna try to glue them together like this to make a one whole piece, you're gonna start encroaching on your real estate space and your bud is gonna be tight, and you'll just have such hard, a much harder time working your petals later on. So what I do is I glue everything, I guess, straight this way as opposed to like flipping it. And that just helps me to stay a little bit more in control and see which directions I'm going and if everything is okay. I do it, you have to be careful, because I just made this mistake, is that when you're pressing it down, don't damage your top, because it's so easy to just put a lot of weight on your top petal. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue everything straight, and it's just glue, bring it somewhere over in the middle. Again, I was not careful with my top and put my finger on it. I just have to remember not to do it. But I just want to show you guys is that it's not touching my score line quite just yet. And it doesn't matter in which order you're gluing it right now, because it's just gluing it evenly on each side. So I'm down here. Okay, and that's my last one. And here we have it. If you are somebody who is more comfortable doing it, where you glue it upside down, by all means, go for it. Now, when we worked our center, right, it already put indentation in here, so that makes it easier for you to have your petal curl up correctly, right? And so when you start curling it, definitely first like twist it, give it a bit more of a twist if you need to, because what you don't want is closed in petals. I mean, you could definitely do it if you plan to do a lot more layers, right? But if you're not, then don't make your rows too tight. It's just not going to have a nice full look at the end. So right off the bat, think, you know, about opening it up your flower instead of closing it in. In any case, I'm gonna just give it a dab on the bottom. Just gonna hold it in place. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you think this is too much of a drastic reduction, right, between your bud and the subsequent layer, by all means, the way you control it is by gluing the subsequent petal a little bit more in. And so you do have a bit of a control, you know, even with the proportion that you are given on how to drive the look. So make sure that when you are gluing it in, you are pressing it, you know, quite a bit of a bond. It's kind of like, you know, you have to give it a pinch. That can be a little tricky to achieve, right? And you can see it, like the bud is going to be forming, so you kind of like literally have to like press it down to get this glued on correctly. You will end up with glue strings. There is just no way to avoid them, and something is crawling on my leg. It's the season of the spiders and whatnot. That's a big thing, right? Is that while your bud looks full, your bottom is not full. So make sure you give it that pinch. If you don't give that pinch right off the bat, it's going to be so much harder for you to glue on the next layer of petals. It's going to be hard for your fingers to get in there and start working it. So you're like literally squeezing it, not on the top, because you don't want to overwhelm your, but it's kind of a, and you have to adjust your fingers. You know, you need to feel it where your bud is on the bottom. Oh, I think I squeezed this one a little too hard, but oh well, it is what it is at this point. Okay. All right, so finishing it up with the other petals. So here you have a choice, right? You can start laying it on right off the bat in between. So instead of doing it another layer this way, right? Again, if you're going for the full petal, you know, do 2 additional layers on the same side. So you would just follow the suit, you know, like put it in right here. But if you wanted to start giving it a more round look, then you are going to be putting in the petals instead of a straight this way. It's going to go to cover each one of your corners. So I'm going to start with covering the corners. And by the way, I have done the gluing whichever different ways, right? Truth of the matter is, it all looks great at the end as long as you're successfully opening your bud. So I'm gonna right away glue all 4 of my corners because that makes it easier for me to work with them. Same thing, just remember not to press it down too hard on the very top so you don't squish your the top of your petals. Okay, and here's my last one. I've been actually working on a template where I'm trying to curl my petals differently and not have my petals the same size, because I've been, you know, like dissecting my flowers and just measuring them. They're not precisely the same. So before you glue it on, what you want to do is, you know, just test it out, like see where it makes sense for it to be adhere and put the glue in there. because what you don't want to do is, you know, end up like glue putting like up in here, or it's like too high up in there, because then it will force you to glue it all the way up in, you know, where your glue is at, and maybe that's not where you want it to. What can also help is to put in like an indentation, so you sort of remember like this is where you want your glue to go. I go into all of this details because I think about all of the common mistakes that I ran into or have experienced. And again, right, you want to give it a bit of a punch. One thing about my roses is that, okay, I have to hold it with both hands and be ready to do that quite a bit. So you can see like there's a pinch right there. So you just put your fingers all the way up in there. Have to be work very careful. So I go into all of those details is because, you know, I try to remember all of the not problems, but issues I had ran into when I started to working with roses. And so I'm just trying to talk them out as I go. Okay, so I do not try to achieve a perfectly symmetrical look with my roses, because I don't think the roses are perfectly symmetrical. I mean, the flowers are not perfectly symmetrical in any way or form. And so, I mean, I can certainly adjust my sizes so they are going to be, you know, just absolutely the right, you know, geometrically perfect, but that doesn't quite make sense to me. That's not to say that I do not like geometrically appropriate petals. I certainly do. Okay, so finishing it up with the my last one, and you guys can see, right, because I squeezed in a little too much on one of my petals because I was talking. It ended up being like, you know, a little squish. I mean, it still looks quite natural and full, and at the end is proportionate, but you know, it is important to get your bud right to make sure that the rest of the assembly falls into place. With that said, even if there is a bit of a mistake here and there, the end result always comes out pretty good. So as you start, you know, as your bud starts to open up more and more, you know, I suggest that you pinch first, sort of like how I'm doing it right here, to again decide where you're gonna put your glue in. So I can see it like where I'm holding with my hands, that's where it's gonna go. You know, make indentation mark if you need to, and then glue it on. And I'm running out of the glue sticks. So I'm just gonna dab it up. Go right back there and pinch it in and hold. And what you want to do is you really want to squeeze the bottom, right, while opening it up at the top. So it's kind of like this. Sorry. Now I'm gonna use my lovely chopstick and just hold it together. I need to hold both places. Okay, and then if you feel that it was not enough of the curl, you can just go back in there and force opening it up a little bit more. So I'm making things unnecessarily difficult for myself, but the reason to that is because I don't want to show you the happy path. I want to show you the unhappy path to make sure that when you are faced with it, you know what to do. Okay, so we have our remaining 4 petals, and they're again going to go now back to in between your sides, right? So you were covering like your corners, and that is going to be going in your corners, essentially between these 2 petals. Now, if you feel that it's starting to be hard for you to work, right, because you happen to have your center and your base, you know, ended up being quite large, you know, You can switch to the, you can just print an additional set of the large one and work with that if you feel that that's going to give you a little bit more of a flexibility. So I'm still going to continue on with my medium, and I'm still going to be gluing it on with my bud facing down instead of flipping it. But again, right guys, if you know somebody that prefers it that way, by all means go for that. I just found that after many different trials and errors that if I do it with my petal on a table and a bud above it, I do it so much better because visually it helps me to see a little bit better where it needs to go. And it's not as much of a problem because I would end up like, you know, getting off the right path, if you will. So with this one, right, you can see that I've pinched it in pretty high. Now, there's two things that I can do. I can glue it right here, and then I would, you know, just hold it gently with my hands to give it a lip. Or I can just glue it all the way on the base, just like literally, you know, it's on the very edge. And the subsequent petals would also hold it in place. I'm going to glue it here to show you guys what it would look like and how to not to ruin your bud while you're gluing it. You know, it's to the other petal, more like in the middle rather than on bottom. So just a tab of a glue, and you literally go with your fingers like this, because you still need that lip, and you're just holding it in a place just like that. So with the roses, one of the things that you have to be careful about is not to put so much. So you guys can see it. So here's another one corner, right? And then I still have 3 more, which would be 2, 3, and 4. But I can see that it's opened up a little bit more on this side rather than on that side. So that's why it helps me to have my petals gluing it with a bud on a petal instead of flipping the bud down, because now I can easily adjust and say like, oh, I think I actually want to change my direction a little bit and put a bit more of a petals here, which I can do. Whereas if I had this, you know, flipped out right now, I wouldn't see that this size is opened up more and this one is kind of squished, because when I was putting it, my first layer of a medium size, I squeezed it too hard. So that's just something to like, that's why I found that that was easier for me to control where I'm going. So I'm gonna see if that's gonna do better if I do it here. And I think like right about in here. So it's still in between, right? It's just like that small fine adjustment to show me what I need to do in order to continue to open my rose as evenly as possible to have that nice round look. And don't be afraid to bend your paper whichever way you need to bend it, right? You can see that like on the bottom, I'm basically sitting here and like I'm squeezing it because I need to figure out where my lip is gonna go. All right, so I'm gonna bend here and just a little bit on the bottom. And then hold it together. You really do have to, like, that's one of the things that I find that roses take so long, that you have to sit and you wait for the glue to adhere. With the other flowers, you know, I feel like you can move a little bit faster. Okay, so let's go ahead to go on the other corner, which is right here. So I'm just going to work the center on the base just a little bit to help it, to give it the right lip. It definitely starts to get more difficult with the putting the finger in the middle, because, you know, like the petal is longer than my finger, but it is what it is. So I tend to work more from the bottom rather than so still pinching it in to make sure that it has a nice. And so while I'm holding it with this one, I'm going to go in with this my other finger to help it, to keep it in place and to adhere. And you guys can see, right, that right there on the base, like there is quite a bit of a pinching in to force the petals to open up more and more. Just want to show you. Okay, and so you can see it, right, that we still covered our 4 corners. So that's the remaining one that I'm going to put it in right now. And I'm going to try to make it lay pretty flat, because I kind of feel like that this side continues to be a little squishy, and I'm not super happy about that. I think what I'm going to do is make another video with the same size of the flower and show you the happy path. Okay, so I'm squeezing it right here, and I'm gonna do the indentation with my nails so I know where my glue goes. And there's my last petal. Oh, and I see that something actually had come apart. You guys can see that this one had come apart, so I'm going to go back and put a dot of a glue right there again and fix it up. Oh, okay, let me try to press it from both sides to get it going. That unfortunately, so that's the glue is something that you absolutely must be mindful about if you're going to be working with a heavier paper. And you certainly, you know, don't stop at just 65 pounds. The heavier papers can give you looks that the 65 does not. You just need to remember that you need to have good glue sticks. So I'm just going to go back in here and finish it up. To make sure that it has a good hold. The empty spots, right? Let's say it's about what, like an almost 8.5-inch rose. So let me just grab 2 flowers that I have, and I'll tell you what I mean. But it's good for filling in. When you start doing your backdrop, right, when you put these 2 flowers like right next to each other, there will be some real estate space, and even if you were to put in like a third flower in there, right, it would still end up having something, and you need to fill it out. And so a lot of times if you were to put that in, right, and let me just see how, oh, you guys actually don't see it. Okay, let me bring this down a little bit here. So what I'm saying is that if you're making the flowers for backdrop, right, and you're putting this two flowers like right next to each other, and then you're gonna put two more, you know, like on the opposite end. You are going to have this empty space between the four of them. So having a rose in between, you know, fits in really beautifully, because it will just end up filling in the empty space perfectly. And you can even, like, you know, overlay like the petals, you know, on top of each other, or fit it in, you know, just like squish them in just like a little bit. And so then there is no empty spot in there, and the entire backdrop ends up being, you know, like beautifully covered with the flowers. So that's just something that I wanted to point it out. Let me put this away and continue on with my large petals. Okay, so the large petals is only 6 of them, and the gluing of them is a little bit easier in that when you glue them, you don't really care which corner you start is. You literally, you know, you just need to space them so that it covers everything around. All right, so let's just work our middle to help us with creating our, I don't even know what I would call it. I know I'm calling it a lip, but I don't think it's a lip. All right, so I'm just gonna curl this up. Oh, I guess I probably should have said that, right? That it's you want to work your center whichever way you want it, but just make sure that your curling of the petal is, you know, this is indented in and the petal is out. And by the way, another option you could have had is that not to do 12 petals of medium size. You could have done 8 petals of the medium size and 2 layers of 6 petals of large. That would actually give you a very nice round look of the flower. So in here, right, you're pretty much going to be gluing it just like on the base. So you still want to glue it, attach it to the base first, but then your petal, you're not going to be bringing it up this high at all, unless your intention is to have, you know, like a squishy flower, but that's not my intention. So you're just going to be gluing it pretty much at the very end, where the almost like, you know, if not even lower, where the curve transfers, transforms into the straight line. So let me first glue the petal on to the base. And like I said, right, at this point it really does not matter where you start. Just don't start layering it like against another petal, right? Make sure you start where it's gonna fall in between the 2 petals. So don't do this. Make sure that it's like in between. Okay, so now when I'm going to be gluing it, my petal to the rest of the bud, right, I'm not going to be gluing it anywhere here because I'm just going to end up squishing it more, and I want to open up my flower as much as possible. Like, I'm literally just going to be like gluing it right here. And so having worked that center definitely helps, because it's going to keep it straight together. And this is where if you have 80-pound paper, it actually would look even better. It would look, you know, it would be so much sturdier. Now, I want to tell you that I had worked very, very hard on the proportions where my large petal behaves exactly the way I am describing it. And the reason to that is because I have tried, you know, other ways, and I found it so ridiculously difficult. If I have to glue my large petal to like anywhere up in here, I mean, it's almost impossible to hold it, and then the assembly times is so long, because I mean, you saw it previously, right? That if you have to glue like a petals in, you know, between to each other, like there's almost like nothing to grab on, and you have to sit and hold it, you know, carefully with the 2 fingers. It's just, it did not work for me. So I had come up with a way where I can do the roses at a pretty decent speed. So your next petal is going to be halfway on the first one, right? So it needs to overlap behind plus go on the top of your bud. And you can see, guys, right, that actually, hold on, it still needs to adhere. I think I just moved it a little bit. Okay, let me readjust that. Now, there is no way for me to glue all of my 6 petals to the bottom first. The way I was able to do it was the first 2 rounds of my medium and then move on to the gluing it to the base. And the reason to that is there is not enough real estate space, and I would also be overlapping it, like, you know, petal on petal. So again, now that I'm going to be gluing it, it's like literally going to be like right there, and I'm going to squeeze it inside. And that's also why, you know, my rose, like, I'm doing it very much on the bottom so that I don't damage my paper in here, because the imperfections on the bottom are going to be hidden, but the imperfections like somewhere in the middle, there's no way to hide it. And you guys can see it, like I'm putting in the glue where the my curve turns into the straight line. And so I'm still doing it, you know, like a bit of a squeeze, and you can do it, I'm digging in with my fingers. And you can see that, like, you know, just about everywhere else it's here, it's wholesome, like not, you know, like there's no breaking it or anything. So, okay, so that one is done. I'm ready to move on to my next one. It doesn't matter if you go this way or that, you know, from the, if you're moving to the right or to the left, it's whichever way it makes sense to you. So this one is still going to be, you know, glued on where half of it falls on the previous petal, and the half is going to come out in here. And if I didn't have to make the tutorial and I just needed to make the rose, it would probably take me about 20 minutes to put it together, which is not bad time at all, considering sorry, I'm still rushing, like I'm not waiting for the glue to adhere till the end. It would take me about 20 minutes, which is not bad at all, in my humble opinion, for the rose. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I could probably even move, like, you know, if the glue cooperates, right, I could do it even faster. Also, you know, what I like with the large petal is that because I know exactly that it's going to be glued on the bottom, like I don't really have to sit, oh, and I just burned myself. Okay. And it just like becomes so much easier to like hold it. I will tell you that, you know, like right now, because I'm working with a small petal, it's definitely easier to hold it than with a large petal, because a large petal, like the bud does get bigger, and you know, you still have to get like a little bit more creative there, but still it's so much better than if I had to glue it anywhere else in the middle. It's just I've tried that, because, you know, like some of the templates are like really huge, and they probably like, you know, additional 2 inches on my small petal, and I found that it was impossible for me to glue it nicely without breaking my rose and having a lot of imperfection. Okay guys, I did run out of the battery life, and I had to go and charge it up. So while I was charging it up, I finished the last 2 remaining petals, and here's the final end product. What I strive to do with my template is to have a round looking rose, which is why I actually prefer to be, you know, a little bit asymmetrical. I'm not happy that I squeezed a bit too much on one side, but you can see that still compensated more than just fine for it. And when my video got cut off, I was on my petal number 4. So then my petal number 5 had still come, you know, where it was touching it halfway, or maybe not halfway, but partially on my 4th petal. And then the last petal, right, is between, on the top of my very first petal and then my 5th petal. And so here's the end result. This is a small size, which is about 10 inches. Let's just measure it to be on a safe side from one end to another. Yep, it is 10 inches this way and it's 10 inches that way. So like I said, all of my petals are going to be the same, right, which is 8 petals for the bud. If you do want to have it fuller, then you just introduce one more round of small size petal. So instead of having 8 here, it will be 12. Then it's 12 petals for medium size, and it's 6 petals for the last. And it doesn't matter whether you're going for the medium size or the large size, the count is going to be the same. You could do several things to make things easier for yourself. You know, you can use 8 medium petals for your middle circle, if you will, and then you can finish it off the remaining 4 petals with a large size. This is, you know, to help you with working at the base of your bud. I find that many people who are just starting out with roses, that's where the pain point is for them. You know, how to continue on with a bud without like squishing the flower too much, because it's you know, like being able to, you know, like do the squeeze and a glue, it kind of takes a practice. You know, and I'm just trying to be thoughtful and mindful and come up with a design where if, you know, people watch a video and they attempt to make the rose, they have flexibility in how to control the layout of the petal. And I will, you know, my the package that I have, like, you know, it will cover all of this technical information in there as well, so you'll have it in your written format. So finish it off, you know, if you find that you're starting to run out of the real estate space with your medium petal, finish it off the last 4 remaining with the large one, and then just still do 6 more large ones for your last layer. Irregardless of what the top of my petal is going to look, right? Like, I mean, this one is pretty standard shape. The count is going to be the same on all of them. That's what I'm going to strive for, because I find it otherwise it just gets a little too hectic. With that said, don't be afraid to interchange the count and try a different, your own way of you know, assembling the flower. The sky is the limit. And I find, you know, and the truth to be told, you know, like a lot of templates are pretty similar. I mean, there are differences, of course, right? Like, I strive to go for the round look. Some people have it more of a precise look. The key is, you know, like, what do you do with your curling? That, I think, makes a big difference. Any case, this is it. This is our beautiful flower. Thank you for sticking out with me. I'm sorry it's a long tutorial, but I'm trying to just sort of you know, cover it one time, all of the gotchas, and hopefully next time it'll be much shorter tutorial. Thank you for watching. You know, if you end up purchasing my templates, thank you for purchasing them. Please tag me with your work, and I appreciate any of the references and the word of the mouth recommendations. All the best.